Μαζί μας στη διευθύντρια του εργαστηρίου, τη Savina Neirotti. Savina, welcome.
Thank you.
So I just made a very small introduction on how important development and reaching out from development phases for filmmakers. I'm just going to ask you to briefly introduce the Film Lab, and then we can continue with the talk.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. It is a great pleasure, and thank you for the honor of saying that Torino Film Lab is the most famous in the world. I wish it was. I hope it is a good lab. Of course, it came after many interesting initiatives, and what happened, what I think can be interesting also from a Greek perspective is to see how Torino Film Lab was born, because it was actually created step by step, and it grew in time, starting from a media-funded program that you will see later in my description. I will go a little more in detail. That was called Script and Pitch Workshops, that started in 2005 and was only open to European participants. From that experience, we then continuously continued a dialogue with filmmakers, and new ideas came that now brought us to have the Torino Film Lab as it is, that, as you can see already in the logo, has 3 keywords that say training, development, and funding. So what was the center idea around Torino Film Lab? It was to sort of unite in some way for first and second time filmmakers 3 very important moments, and that was the moment when you actually have the idea and start developing your script and your project idea. The moment when you actually begin dialogue with the rest of the film professionals, so that's when you are actually developing not only the script and the content, but the project in terms of the relationships that will make that project possible. And that's when you are seeking for co-producing, for producers at first, and for co-producers that, as we know at the moment, is essential for a European film industry, co-production. At the same time, we also saw that the third word is funding, because we tried to see if it was possible to have some production funding, and that's how Torino Film Lab was born. So it's a year-round international lab for emerging talents from all over the world, and this means for writers, directors, producers, and other film professionals. Project development. What do we do in Torino Film Lab for project development? Okay, here comes the first program that we had when Torino Film Lab as a frame did not exist. That was Script and Pitch Workshops. It was launched in 2005, as I said before, and it is for projects at early stage of development. It has become now open to filmmakers from all over the world. Deadline for application is 31st of October. Each year. Actually, it was in December before, so if any one of you has already followed us, be aware that we had to anticipate the deadline. You just need a treatment to apply, of course, and you do not need to have a producer. So this is a program that will actually be open to a lot of filmmakers that are starting out. It is true that in the years we are having more and more applicants from the rest of the world that will also have a producer attached. But I am kind of proud of saying that we always select a number that do not have, and that in the process of developing, will then find it through also the Torino Film Lab network. And talking about project development, we have another program that is called Framework, that is for projects that are at a more advanced stage of development. In this case, there is no application to this program. Why? Because we have a number of people scouting, and we have a number of projects that will come into the framework program after having been selected for Script and Pitch. So after you have done Script and Pitch, you are able to reapply to framework, okay? And be selected to take part in framework. That is, of course, open open not only at that point to the writer or writer-director, but is open to the team. Because at that point, if we are talking about advanced stage of development, the producer hopefully should be on board. It doesn't mean that that the project has to be financed yet, but the creative team has to be in place. So if you're only a writer, you have to have a director and a producer attached in order to participate in these workshops. And what happens in these workshops? Script and Pitch has many workshops. It has 3 workshops. Framework has 2 workshops. They are week-long. What do we do? I'll talk in general of how our workshops work, because of course every program that I will describe has some differences in terms of content. That's what makes because every program is targeted to some specific needs. But there are some elements that are absolutely important for what could be called professional training today in these specific subjects. So there is a certain amount, while training, you are at the same time, it is a peer-to-peer exchange, because we are talking about professional training. We are imagining that you have already studied film and have done film studies, so what you are looking for is a dialogue. So what is also extremely important is the quantity of group work and how much these exchanges can be guided so that they become something really an interesting experience and an enrichment. And as you said before, when we're talking about meeting people, we're talking about networking. And let us laugh a little moment, because networking should not be confused with going at cocktails. No, because unfortunately this is what some people that should fund us will think about. I mean, we're paying these film people to just meet and chat around a drink. Well, that's not what networking is supposed to be about. Networking is actually being able to create interesting working relationships that will not necessarily be used in that particular year, but can last in a lifetime. And we do have a lot of examples now that we have more than 300 alumni of how this is really extremely important for also creatively, but also creating a sort of safe space among filmmakers from different countries where you're not alone, with your problems, but you can also exchange and feel sometimes the support of other people that is very much needed, especially in a moment like this where uncertainty and the difficulty of getting a first or second, and I've heard that the most difficult film to kick off is the third, so we're talking about a crisis that is at every stage of filmmaking. So it is extremely important. So how are these workshops? Well, these workshops mean we have, of course, international experts that will come and guide the process. There's a lot of group work. There's one-to-one meetings. There are case studies. There are master classes. There are professionals coming in. Sometimes also depending on the needs of the different projects that we select each year. So it is quite intense. They all involve online working in between workshops. It also helps, and I'm happy you said that before, you were talking about also giving a sort of rhythm, helping to shape a process. Sometimes it can be difficult to focus on how much time you get involved with your project. How is the structure of this? So all the workshops end so the third workshop or the second workshop of all our programs will be some days in advance to the meeting event, but they all come to this final moment when you are asked to present what you have done. And again, the word pitching here can be scary because it can go back to the fact of selling your project. But pitching from a European, I think, perspective can be seen as a way to develop, as a real tool for development. So let's talk about project presentations at the Torino Film Lab meeting event, where you are, of course, able to present your project, but also you are moderated and the audience can ask questions. And this moment is extremely important because when you are able to tell your stories, you are able to see what is not working for yourself sometimes. So sometimes it's not, oh, I have it all clear in my mind and I'm not able to tell you what my film is about. That is really, sometimes it is true because some films are very difficult to explain, and of course you need visuals because of course you are all writer-directors, but there is a moment where that shows that there might be a problem in how the intention of the filmmaker is not able to be expressed, as I said. So you need the reaction of an audience, not in terms of a judgment, but in terms of, are people understanding my emotional theme? And are people, is the core of my film actually in my words, and will it be in my script? Sometimes it is just not, because it is very difficult to write a script and to write a synopsis and to write a treatment. Sometimes it's extremely difficult. So it's all work that you do, because of course to prepare to the meeting event you also write your synopsis, you prepare a book of projects. If you go online on our website you can see all the materials of the previous years. You can look into the projects of all the different programs, you can see what they have presented. You do not see the updates because we have not been able to create a website now that can be simultaneously updated by all the participants, but you will have an idea of the kind of projects that have gone through, and you can download all our past book of projects and you can see, well, what happened to them, what they had to prepare. What happens in Torino is after this public pitching in the mornings, of course there is afternoons of one-to-one meetings, and it is the producers invited or the distributors and sales agents that will ask for having a 20-minute meeting with you. But of course, in those 3 days we are always together, dinners, lunches, breakfast, more or less, and so there is a lot of other opportunities to meet with people. And in that sense, you need to be, again, extroverted in the sense of being able to reach the person that you are interested in yourself. And that doesn't mean harassing people at all, but it really means having an interesting conversation. Because people are also scared of saying, well, how can I bother? But I mean, that's our job. Being bothered by filmmakers is my job. So if somebody doesn't want to do it, I think he should change job. Let's go to the funding part. Each year, Torino Film Lab's region gives us the possibility of awarding production funds. This is only for the participants in the framework program. You can understand why, because that's the only projects that are ready to go into production. And so it is not development fund, it is really production. So it's a grant that goes from 50,000 to a maximum of 200,000 euros. Usually the projects competing in the framework program are 10 to 12. And in the past years the awards have been around 580,000 euros. This year it will be less. Unfortunately, there have been cuts in the whole world, and so of course the Piemonte region also, but we hope to have again around 400,000 euros for these awards. These awards are given by an international jury that changes each year. Why is this happening? Well, you can imagine. I mean, you can imagine that the staff of Torino Film Lab is working with these projects for years, and we have a closeness to all our participants, and we need at some point that an external jury will come and look at what is there. And so an international jury will read all the scripts, will see all the previous materials, will meet with the filmmakers, will listen to the pitch, and will then award the final awards. And we're going up to the 5th edition. For the people of Script and Pitch, that is our first program, we have a development award that is given by Arte, It's the International Relations Arte Prize of 6,000 euros, so there's also that possibility. And then we have another award that is not in money, but it is a partnership with another training initiatives for producers. That is the PostProduction Connection training program. That is very interesting especially for producers that are, starting out. It really puts a focus on how important it is to concentrate on the post-production moment, how that can, first of all, raise your budget to, if you don't know how to handle it well, how that can probably make your film impossible to finish, how delicate it is and how difficult it is. So one of the producers of Framework is invited by people of the European Post-Production Connection to go in their workshop and get some training for these aspects.
Are there any prerequisites? Once you get the funding, say I pitch my project and the jury likes it and they decide to give me 100,000. Are there any restrictions or prerequisites except for just mentioning the Torino Film Lab?
Yes, at the moment it might change in the future, but at the moment this money is like soft money. You can shoot where you want, you can do whatever you want, and some examples of films that have received this award will show you how these awards don't go to necessarily Italian filmmakers. There's actually just one at the moment that has been completed, 2 are coming, but we awarded more than 20, and so yes, there are absolutely no obligation to spend the grant in Italy or in any specific country, and no deals that have to be done with Italy. We are looking into holding on to the Italian distribution rights in the future, because what we have also seen is that unfortunately, we were talking last night, there is an issue around distribution and we will have, all of us will have to solve it. Of the films that have been through the Torino Film Lab, only 2 have been distributed in Italy, and so I feel that this makes no sense, and let's see if Torino Film Lab can do something at least for Italian distributions in the future, but it is not in place yet, so I don't want to talk about it because of course I need to raise some funds in order to do this. Here are a few examples of films that have gone through the extended process of Torino Film Lab. One of them, for example, was A Respectable Family by Masoud Bashi. Here, it's really an example of somebody starting the script and pitch and actually being scouted, because, well, Torino Film Lab has a number of people that also are maybe story editor trainees or trainers or just professionals working that always travel the whole world trying to look out for projects. And of course sometimes they are for framework, they scout for framework, but other times your project is not ready and you will maybe be invited to apply to script and pitch. So this project was actually scouted by, was just a page actually, when one of our scouts and now head of programs of Torino Film Lab, it's called Matteo Darras, he met Masoud and found the project interesting. He asked him to write a treatment, said, I think he should apply. He did apply, he did get selected in script and pitch, met with the producers, the French producers during the meeting event that year, was able to make it into the selection of framework, and won an audience award at the meeting event of 30,000 euros. The film is now completed and presented at the Directors for Night and Cannes this May. Another project that is going to start shooting, it was supposed to be now September, but I think he's delayed of a couple of months. For example, is Álvaro Bretner from Uruguay. Okay, so Maksud that you saw, it was Iran. Here we have an Uruguayan filmmaker. He started script and pitch in 2010, again had all these meetings, and he won a production award of 100,000 and the audience award. The difference here is that the production awards are given by the jury, but there's also an audience award of 30,000 that all the decision makers invited can vote. So there is an award that the audience gives. So this means that development does take time, and that time we spend together in making your script the best it is, but also in understanding what it means to put your ideas not on paper, in film, exchanging all the group work inside the labs is done with people of different nationalities sitting together and working on each other's script. So you go there with your script and your project, but you are asked to collaborate on the development of the others. You are working, in the case of script and pitch, you are working with, it's groups of 4, with a head tutor, a sort of a story editor that will guide the whole process, so will be your point of reference, let's say, the whole time. But then there is also a story editor trainee that has been trained through working on your projects. And then usually from the second workshop you get helped also by a new program that we actually launched 2 years ago, that is the audience design program. So what are we saying when we're talking about audience design? Since usually in Europe when you say audience you think, oh my god, mass audience, America, this is not my film. But why not? I mean, your film has to be seen by an audience, however niche it may be, and however small and however sophisticated. Your film has to reach that audience. And we're trying to see at the level of development what we can do to make filmmakers aware of their audience at very early stage, and what could be ways of engaging with an audience while developing your project. And this means, of course, not at all spoiling the content, but seeing how many possibilities inside your ideas there are. Because it is, in some cases, when you do a development process in these workshops, you go back to what was the original idea, what was your point of inspiration, why do you want to tell this story? And sometimes you think you know, but you don't really, and it's only by working on it and having a lot of people ask you a lot of questions that you suddenly you're suddenly reminded that there was an image that started the whole process. Well, maybe that image, that of course is part of the process, also if you don't know it yet, can be extremely interesting, not only to be developed into the script you're going to be writing, but also for people that will then have to join and be the audience of your project. So this kind of process, I think.
There's another thing that we might have to clarify a bit. I mean, if you're an emerging filmmaker and you're working and you find yourself in a group work like that, you have to open up and share a lot of information, not just about your project and your ideas, but many times also personal things that are important for your project, because at the end of the day we're talking about artistic expression, and artistic expression has to do with ourselves and so on. So it's a difficult process sometimes. What is your advice to a young filmmaker here in this room who has never had to share before?
Great question. This is extremely important, because we tend, as much as I believe, because I run one of these programs, that this is important, I also respect the fact that you need to play the game, and you need to know yourself. And of course, there's many ways of making films. This is not the only one. Let's not make a manifesto about everything, because it intends to be, okay, you gotta do this. No, this is interesting because I think it can help you. But you need to be open to receive this kind of help. If you are not in that frame of mind of being able to share, discuss, if you think that might be confusing, because you will receive different kind of feedback, and you will have to be able to sort out sometimes what is important and what is not. Of course, there will also be a lot of feedback that you will not take it. But it's a way, you have to, of course, be ready to hold this process that is, as you said, also a psychological process. I can tell you, usually the second workshop, the script and pitch second workshop is a very, very tough workshop. It is not easy. Yes, because personal things come, because at some point you feel, okay, now I've got to change everything. That is typical. So you go into your first workshop and you think, okay, I'm here, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. The other people are going to say, this is great, and I'm going to write my film. Usually it doesn't happen like that. You get into the first workshop and everything is brought to pieces, or at least is analyzed in such details that you start having a lot of questions. And you feel, oh, this is great, I can answer all these questions very quickly. So then what happens in the second, in the online phase, when you are waiting until the second workshop, is that you look at all these issues that were raised on your script, and you realize that some you are unable to answer, or some trigger other issues, and you find how difficult it is. That's the work, that's the work. And so typically, second workshop is, okay, so now I thought I was doing, of course I'm joking a little bit to give you an idea, because otherwise it's all heavy stuff, but I thought I was going to do a family drama. I'm actually now going to do a comedy. And this is a joke, but you can get confused at this point sometimes, because that's an inner reaction, that's an emotional reaction. It has nothing to do with the content, but it goes along, So of course there is all this, but let's see what there is on the other side. What on the other side you have people there that have no interest, if not that you find your own voice. So they have no interest in making you do your film as they want. They actually, I'm talking about the story editors and the trainers and the tutors on this program. So they will also be able sometimes to say, okay, wait a minute, you are now too worried about answering feedback than working and raising what is really essential for your script. So there is always a guide. People are there to guide you through. And I must tell you, what I'm always surprised about, and I'll say it, and I hope it is true also for our 5th edition, after being with the filmmakers on the second workshop in June usually, when I see them again in November, and I see them going up there, it's a situation exactly like this. It's an auditorium, you have more or less these people, and you are sitting here and you are actually talking and presenting your project. I am so proud, because I feel that the project, that in some way you have found your way. It happens. And if I think of what happens in the second workshop, well, I feel that then that moment is probably needed in the process.
I think we're running out of time, so we have to take some questions from the audience. We don't have a lot of time, but don't worry, she's happy to be harassed by filmmakers, so you can always harass her later. So, gentlemen,
hi, thanks for the presentation. I'd like to ask if in the whole process, beginning from script and pitch, if the language of the script is a problem in the whole problem.
Well, look, it has never been, I must tell you. It is always the language, because of course it all happens in English. And so you need to translate your script or to write it in English at some point. I must tell you though that, so yes, in a sense it is a problem for the filmmaker, but all these problems have been overcome. I think people are scared in the beginning because they say, well, how can I do this in English? I'm not saying that this also becomes an English course, but in some cases people have overcome. Of course, nobody expects your script to be perfect. If you don't have the money to get it translated, we can still work on it. Also, if the language is, and then maybe we can look at the dialogues together. So for the group work, what is essential is there, and has never been a problem concerning language. And we usually have projects from over 20. There's never more than 1 or 2 participants per country in all of our programs.
Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ τη Savina. Thank you very much.